What's up, everybody? It's your boy Drew with High Fight IQ, and you are now watching the MMA Conspiracy Hour with my boys Todd Adkins and Miguel Iterate. Miguel has been the matchmaker for over 200 shows worldwide and has worked with Hook and Shoot, Euphoria, Bodog, and ADCC. Make sure you subscribe to the Todd Atkins Show on YouTube. You can also find Miguel on his YouTube channel at MMA Collector 74. Don't forget to subscribe to High Fight IQ on all social media platforms, the House Call Sports on YouTube, the Fight Pit on YouTube. Now let's talk some fights, baby. Let's go.
All right, so it's Todd Atkins and Miguel Durati. It's been a while. For those of you that enjoy this show, we haven't done one a little bit, and Miguel's had some technical issues with this computer that he fried, and maybe we can tell that story. But today, after that, we're going to talk about, the Sean Strickland versus Tiki Gosen. Miguel's and we've been around from the beginning. Miguel obviously is a great historian of MMA, boxing, combat sports in general. I think he can get some great background into Tiki Gosen, the fighter, and also some of the story. And yeah, Miguel, I'll just kind of let you take it away.
Well, let's start off with Dana White and the Sphere. That's kind of what we got
You want to kind of
before I do the other subject up. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that because Dana is the biggest star, so we can use his name.
right?
And when Dana talks, I think this is a good example of one of those things where nobody, if you call Dana out, Dana just shuts you down. He's an immense and powerful, big personality, so taking him on head on is not a great idea. But this Sphere show is now less than 2 weeks away. He was so gung ho about it. They went to a U2 concert and they loved the Sphere and they was going to put on the greatest show ever in combat sports history and things like that. And he sort of backed off on that rhetoric a little bit. Now he's talking more along the lines of, he couldn't get the MGM venue, and they gave it a Canelo for that show. And what happened? What happened?
Yeah, why is he changing his tune? What do you think about that? Because he never mentioned any of that stuff initially. He's saying he became obsessed with the Sphere, that it was his love letter to Mexico, that he had to do it on Mexican Independence Day because it was an obsession of his. He never mentioned squat about MGM giving away the date.
Where I think he's become so accustomed when he backs off on something that people don't call him out on it, that or if they do, that he's able to shut down the rhetoric, and that kind of ties into the Tiki stuff because there does appear to be like a sordid background and underground thread to that story that there has not been a lot of media coverage on. And when Sean Strickland talks about rednecks or the border or Trump, it's always headlines. Here he's actually making somewhat of a serious accusation, and it doesn't come up. So Dana has his hand on the pulse of the media at all times. He's not going to go on your podcast if you're going to treat him bad, if you're not going to let him talk 80% of the time and spew the company line. I'm going to speculate a little bit here. What I can see is that the Sphere is a concert venue. And it's the Sphere management people, which I believe in Madison Square Garden, which I think is one of the initial things that fooled Dana. And that is that he's worked with some of the people over there before, and he's probably got a good relationship with them. They've done shows at Madison Square Garden, which, maybe prior to the Sphere was still the most famous arena in the world, right? So maybe he thought, hey, he's going to get his way, he's going to get everything he's done. What I feel is happening here, backing off, is that he's not getting his way at the Sphere. And I've done a show at a venue in Atlantic City that is the Tropicana Casino. And the Tropicana Casino has a similar layout to the Sphere. Obviously, not even close in any other comparison. Other than that, it's a stage with 3/4 seating in front of, to see the concert or whatever's going on down there. And behind the stage, you usually got the musicians with whatever show that they're going to have. But that's a big distraction in an MMA or a boxing show. Boxing show or an MMA show requires the ring to be in the middle and 360 crowd. And there's a few reasons for that, you know. Um, in a concert, you can have lights and you can have all kinds of things, and people are also focusing on the music and stuff. You can't, but in MMA and in combat sports, which Dana promised the greatest combat sports show ever, it's just simply, it's very hard to overcome. The UFC probably shoots with, I would say, probably similar to something like 11 cameras. You know, some shots from a distance, some shots from here, and then the ring surrounded by with camera guys that cover sections of the ring here. If you only have crowd on one side or on 3/4 of the side, then you probably have to eliminate two camera guys, or two camera shots are really going to be useless because you're going to be doing what? Looking at a wall, looking at screens that are going to distract from the action, or looking at bleacher seating, which is how we did it at the Trump Taj Mahal. Let me tell you, from when you're talking about a high-end venue like the Sphere, the bleacher seating would be very obviously cheesy and cheap. So when Dana promised the greatest show on earth, I think they may be having trouble overcoming some of those actual technical difficulties. And the Sphere, he might have said, "Oh, we'll just rip out some seating, take the stage down, put it back up." Now you're talking about they probably weren't. The Sphere said we're going to look at doing sports venues in the future, sports activities in the future. They were made for concerts, so that stage may not be as easy as taking it down and putting it back up. Maybe they should have thought of that they were going to do sports, but if they didn't, I'm predicting that that's the main reason here why Dana has backed off is his promise of delivering the greatest show on earth is going to be a little more difficult when even for TV, if you have to eliminate two of the on-ring cameras on TV on the production, you're going to notice if they're in the far end and these guys on this side of the camera are rather. Yeah, if they're here closest to the crowd and the guys with their backs to the wall behind them are the guys having to shoot it instead of the guy right on top of them because you're afraid of the way the arena's going to look in the presentation, I think there are logistics to overcome that they may not have thought about or may not have been able to overcome. Maybe he thought of them, maybe he thought that they would just do what he says. It's hard to, Dana usually gets his way, but when he backs off like this, my idea is, my thinking is that he's not getting his way here. That the greatest show on earth promise that he's no longer saying is because he's similar to slap fighting, not going to be able to deliver what he promised.
Right, and also I think how much money they're in on the show has probably got rubbing him the wrong way too. Because he's mentioned.
We can take down the stage. Here's the bill. You pay it, and then all of a sudden things go upside down there. Again, most venues will work with the arena with the talent to put the show on, and they provide a lot of stuff. Obviously, the Sphere. Dana doesn't have to rent lights to do the Sphere. The Sphere's got lights. He doesn't have to rent a PA system the way you do on small, tiny shows. In the Tropicana and things like that. The Sphere's got all that. But when somebody says, hey, we're going to have to tear the ring down, put up seating on the whole surround and put the thing in the middle and something completely they're not prepared to do. So, yeah, that's going to be a big bill. And again, you're talking about a high-end venue, so it's not like they're going to be able to do that on the cheap. In Vegas, it's all done by union labor, too.
Right.
So, Dana may have friends and people in high places in the unions there, stuff like that. But the Sphere is something new. Working the Sphere is a good spot for the guys in the union as well. Things like this. It's not going to be easy to pull off changing the venue around. It's almost, I think, the other part. Like I said, Dana's not struck out like this in a long time. They built the Apex as a perfect venue for the TV show and things like that. But the Apex doesn't have that problem of. It's surrounded by things that they're able to present on television. It doesn't look terrible. I'm not sure it's 360 seating, but it's a nice, small, cozy venue. And there is a 360 atmosphere where they can produce it at 360 degrees. And I don't know if that's exactly the case at the Sphere yet. And I would, if I had to guess, I would guess that that's the main reason is that the greatest show on earth that he promised is going to be very hard and very expensive to deliver there because the venue's not perfect for sports. And you're talking about a perfect venue for music, but not perfect for sports. How do you get it perfect for sports? Hey, you got to spend money. It would be more worth it for them to spend $50 million refurbishing the Apex, modernizing it completely, and continue to shoot there.
They are. I mean, they are expanding it.
Yeah, keep expanding it. And expand. What I'm talking about is a complete expansion modernization. So expanding it might be, knock down a wall, put up a couple more seats, try to keep it under budget. And the Sphere, when it came on board and has delivered shows like the U2 show that impressed Dana so much and stuff, it's like the sky's the limit. It's a different type of expansion and refurbishing that they might need to look at to get their own venue to that level. It may not be worth it for them to do, but then, this becomes another slap fight where Dana was just talking about something that he's not going to be able to deliver on.
Yeah, I mean, but what I want to know is, he obviously knew. I mean, he talked about this. They had a Dana White Contender Series post press conference, which they do, and he said he knew. I don't know if it was a day later or a week later, but he had already known that they did not get the date at the MGM runs the T-Mobile Arena. He knew then that the MGM had gave the date away. So he was already lying from the very beginning about why he was doing the show at the Sphere. Why do you think he did that?
After 20 years, you can't get. I do believe that you get burnt out, and you could see in certain aspects of Dana's presentation, when a reporter repeats a stupid question, he's no longer the shark that used to kill reporters. He's more like he doesn't give a shit, and he's burnt out. There are many other examples of that. So what? How do you get a guy like that motivated? Like when I talk about fighters and fighter pay, taking a pay cut is something that's very dismotivating. If the fighters are constantly increasing and going up in pay, they get more motivated for the fights, right? So with Dana, pay is not the real issue, but is motivation. And when he went to the U2 concert, I remember going to see the Pride show in Las Vegas, and they had a wall of LED lights and things like that were state of the art for the time. This is 15 years ago more. That was definitely head and shoulders above what the UFC was doing. And they came over with a chartered plane and brought 200 people from staff over, translators and everybody over there. It was kind of like a last hurrah for them, but they put on a major big show, Fedor versus Coleman, et cetera, et cetera. And that was motivational to us at Bodog. We had. I went to the show with our production people, and they would talk about the cost of the lighting and all that sort of stuff. And these guys, they spend a lot of money. And I think now in modern times, the Sphere must be exponentially better and bigger than anything I saw with that Pride show in Vegas. And Dana's been to big shows. Dana's put on some of the biggest shows in combat sports already. So what motivated him, he must have seen something technologically or had an idea that he got pumped up about. And then also knowing that he didn't have the MGM building, he says, yeah, well, I'm going to top it and do something better and bigger than I could do at the MGM. And screw those guys, but not screw them by speaking out against them in public or talking bad about them. And now he's probably faced with the fact that the other fact is if you're going to do a show at the Sphere, John Jones or Conor McGregor should be on it.
Yeah, but
I'm not
remember
one to
you
tell
got
you.
the schedule to fill, like we had talked about in the past.
Sure, I've defended them before for UFC 300. It turned out to be a great card, and you can do things other than that. But you're talking about the biggest show from Dana White's own mouth. They need to deliver their biggest stars, and they didn't with that. So all of a sudden, the show looks really just like another UFC show with some bells and whistles. And now not being able to deliver on the show and what he wanted, which for pay per view, for live, with the way the dome lights up and the whole thing, must be, something that they'll still be able to do some intense things with, but it's not what Dana had in mind. That's the main thing. So now he's starting to give reasons and explanations. Yeah, I think the fact is he's like the MGM Grand screwed. They gave the fight to Canelo. Okay, no problem. I'll go to the Sphere and top them. And it's becoming apparent that that's not what's going to happen. They don't have, is Grasso on the card? The
Yeah, I think she was the co-main.
Okay, that's their biggest
Grasso versus
UFC.
Shevchenko rematch.
Okay, that's their biggest Mexican star. And I like Grasso. I know her uncle. I match made for her uncle here in Costa Rica, and so I've always rooted for her. And I think that she's gone to amazing heights, and you know, definitely has carried the Mexican flag well for him. But she's not as big as they're not going to outdraw Canelo in the Mexican audience.
Right.
So now, again, there's another part of the retort of Dana's that just got shut down. So he's going to deliver something big for the Mexican public. That on Mexican Independence Day and stuff like that. The MGM Grand is going to be much more oriented towards the Mexican independence and much more delivering a bigger star and basically a more basically I don't want to say they're making Dana a liar, but again, Dana's another guy. He's the guy who's not used to not delivering. And that's what I think you see him backing off here because he's not delivering what he said.
Right. Yeah, I think it's been a strange turn of events though, where
The show is only 2 weeks away. There's no fixes at this point.
no, but I mean to set yourself up like that, where he had just given like a BS reason for why he wanted to do the Sphere. It was never true from the beginning.
I think that's what he decided the rhetoric was going to be. That he
Right.
didn't want to. He's going to have to use the MGM Grand again. He's known those people for 20-something years. He doesn't want to come out and badmouth them and say, "Well, they screwed me, so we're going over here." Now it comes out that he didn't have he can't back out of that venue. He's going to have to deliver a lukewarm show because the venue did give away to a bigger show. They looked at the presented card, the MGM Grand Prix did, and said, Grasso or Canelo? Yeah, I'll go with Canelo. Sorry, I like Alexa.
That's interesting. Do you think because this is something they did ask him on the press conference. And he's not going to answer it truthfully, I'm sure, but who do you think's going to do? He also mentioned that, and I don't know if this is true or not. You never know anything with him if it's true or not, but he said the MGM was guaranteeing the gate. And someone asked him, do you think that Canelo will sell more pay-per-views than you? And I think he said, I don't know, which is probably the most honest thing I've heard him say. But
yeah, Canelo. I don't think Canelo's quite replaced Mayweather in the pay-per-view sales stuff. Who's the opponent for Canelo? I'm not even on top of this anymore.
Berlanga,
Okay.
he's a guy from Bronx.
Okay. Yeah. So they don't have
He's
a
kind of
top
playing.
flight.
He's kind of playing to the Puerto Rican crowd, but he's from the Bronx.
Okay. The Bronx is part
De
Puerto
La
Rican.
Hoya kind of gave him a hard time about that. He was saying, "Dude, you're from the Bronx. You're not Puerto Rican. They don't claim you."
here's the thing: is who Canelo is still one of the top stars in boxing, and I don't know if it's true, but I heard a rumor that the actual ticket prices for the Sphere show are dropping.
Yes,
So
substantially.
yeah, so yeah, that's something that Dana doesn't like to do. And it's not a great sign. It means that they're not delivering the show, or not are not seeing the ticket sales that they want to, and they're not delivering the show, and they're not attracting the ticket sales. The MGM Grand doesn't need anything except Canelo for that.
Right.
And like I said, I like Rossi, and I'm not sure what other Mexican fighters they have on the roster, but she's, I think, the only, obviously, the Mexican champion, right? So she would have to headline and stuff like that, and she just hasn't done enough, to uh, if you wanted to take on Canelo, you would do it with McGregor.
Yeah. But I mean, like you said, they had to go with, the schedule, and they
Yeah,
couldn't do the super
and
card that they
hey,
probably would have
it
preferred to
was
do.
well, Jones is a problem again, but McGregor might be chomping at the bit, and they put McGregor off, and Dana said November, but that was Dana at the end of the year. That toe injury, it's not inconceivable that they could have gotten McGregor on this card.
Right.
And like I said, it, I would say at the gate, Canelo's going to run him over, and on pay-per-view, the chances are that Canelo will also run them over.
But I
So
don't
yeah,
think
so
Dana will,
and
at the end of the day, I don't think, because, he's saying this a one and done, it's a special thing, blah, blah, blah. Plus, they never put out their pay-per-view numbers officially anyway, so it'd probably be minimized in public if that happened. Don't you think?
yeah, no, it's not big. It's not a big deal. But I think the thing is Dana did sort of, with the initial presentation of the idea that he was blown away, that he was so inspired to do something big, the greatest combat sports show of all time. Now it might not even be the greatest combat sports show on that day.
Right.
Dana's not used to taking little black eyes like that.
Yeah,
So
for
that's
sure.
what I think you see more than anything is him. You're right. Like I said, it's not a major thing, but it is a little black eye. And he's a guy that usually walks through these things unscathed and usually wins, right? So, like on May 5th, the Cinco de Mayo thing, which is where, there were a few years where they actually did have Canelo and the Mexicans backing off and not presenting boxing so that the UFC could do their show.
Yeah.
Now it seems like, hey, they don't seem to be afraid of Dana and the UFC machine anymore.
Well, he'll probably go on, late enough and all that kind of stuff, like he did before that one time.
Yeah, he sat and watched a fight. It might have been Masvidal Diaz, was it, or one of
Yeah.
those Masvidal Askren, something like that, where he's actually watching the fight. Canelo watches the UFC fight and stuff like that. I think, again, those Dana is not presenting that level of show anymore. Not even though he promised it. This really is looking like, what is it, UFC 304? Sounds about right, right?
Right.
UFC 304. It'll be forgotten in a few years, in a year. And that's not what he said he was going to do. He said he was going to put on the greatest combat sports show of all time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's why you see this mixed message from him, because on some things he was less than forthcoming, like, the behind the scenes dealings and stuff. I think he tried to maybe stick it to the MGM and say, yeah, I'm still going to do a bigger show than you guys. I don't need you. And it turns out that he maybe would have been able to do a better show at the MGM than at the Sphere for whatever is the reason.
Yeah. It's an interesting, just the interesting contrast of messaging from the beginning to now.
Yeah, and 2 weeks out with ticket prices dropping, it's not the usual way that Dana's rhetoric goes, which is, taking a step back on things. So it is interesting to see him squirm a little.
But I find it interesting that not a lot of people are covering the fact that he's changed his messaging.
Yeah, like the MMA media out there kowtows to them, and Dana controls them. If they don't put out his message or try to make him look bad, he just doesn't deal with it. So yeah,